All right, today we're going to talk about topic 6.4, which is writing the equation of a line. Now, last week we talked about slope and how to find slope, and that's very important. Now we're going to talk about how that relates to writing the equation of a line. Now, when I'm writing the equation of a line, how I go about that is based on what information that the question or problem is giving me. So the first scenario we're going to talk about is when you have to use the slope intercept formula. So it's a very important concept. The slope-intercept formula is y is equal to mx plus b. So that is what the slope-intercept formula is. And when we're talking about slope and intercept, all of these variables, what they stand for, we know last week when we see a lowercase m, we know that stands for slope. And then b is the y-intercept. So it's the y-intercept of the equation. So now let's look at some examples. Now these are typically pretty easy. And again, which formula I use is determined on which information that I am given. So for example number 1, we'll say write the equation. And the information that you are giving is, they tell you that m is equal to 3 and b is equal to -5. So we know that m is equal to slope. So don't forget that, because sometimes they won't tell you that. And b is equal to the y-intercept. So we know the problem gave us slope and y-intercept, so we're going to use the slope-intercept formula, which is y is equal to mx plus b. Now, very simply, all I got to do is plug everything in, and I am done. So I take this m, and I plug that 3 in right there, and then I take this -5, and I plug it in for b right there. Once I do that, the answer that I'm going to end up with is y is equal to 3x minus 5. This is the easiest scenario. When they give you the slope and the y-intercept, you know you go to the slope-intercept formula, and you're done. Let's look at another example. Number 2. Let's say I'm going to ask you to write the equation, and I'm going to give you the slope is equal to -1/2, and the y-intercept is equal to -8. So again, based on what the problem gives you, that tells you what formula to use. So we know they gave us slope, which is also equal to m. Got to remember that. And they gave us the y-intercept, which is equal to b. So now that we have those two things, we know we got slope and y-intercept. So we're going to use the slope-intercept formula, which again is y is equal to mx plus b. Now, very simple stuff. I take this, plug it in for m. I take this, plug it in for b. And my answer is y is equal to -1/2 x minus 8. Very, very, very simple when they give you the slope and the y-intercept. Now we're going to look at the other scenario, which is a little more complicated. And that's when they give you, that's a case where they give you the slope and the y-intercept. This next one is when they give you the slope and a point. So this is called the point slope formula, because that's what they gave me. They gave me a point and the slope. And what that formula is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Now this one's a little more, this one actually requires some math after you plug some stuff in. So let's go ahead and talk about what all these things mean. So m is the slope. We know that. We can understand that. And then y1 is the y coordinate that they give you, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we label. And x1 is the x coordinate that they give you. So that's the point slope formula. It's a very important concept. Got to make sure we have that. Now let's go ahead and look at some examples. So example number 3, I'm going to tell you to write the equation. And I'm going to tell you that the slope is 2, and it goes through the point 2, 5. So here they've given us slope and then they've given us a point. So we know we're going to use the point slope formula. So I'm going to write that out. It again is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So the first thing I need to do is label, just like we did in the last one. We know slope is equal to m. And then I can label this point just how we label all the other points, x1 and y1. We only have 1 point, so there's no x2 and y2. So now I take all of these things and plug them in. So I'm going to take that 2 and plug it in for that m. I'm going to take this 2, this x1, and plug it in over here. And I'm going to take 5, which is y1, and plug it right there. So once I do that, I should end up with y minus 5 is equal to 2 times x minus 2. So again, all I'm doing is plugging stuff in. So I should still end up with a y and an x in there. All I plugged in is for y1 and x1. Now, I have to go ahead and solve this and put it into a formula that makes sense, which means I have to solve this for y after I do this. So the first thing I need to do is distribute this 2. So I would end up with y minus 5 is equal to 2x minus 4, because 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Now I'm solving for this right here, y, which means I need to get it by itself, which means everything that isn't that y needs to move. So all I have to do at this point is move the number that accompanies the y. So I'm going to add 5 here. And obviously I have to add it to this 4. I cannot add it to that 2x. The reason is that has an x. So once I'm done, that cancels, bring everything else down. I end up with y is equal to 2x and then negative 4 plus 5 plus 1. And that would be my answer. We always want our answer in y equals. We'll look at one more example. So number 4, we'll look at, I'll tell you to write the equation. And I'll tell you that the slope is negative 2 over 3, and it goes through 3, negative 6. So at this point, I know I have slope, and then I have a point. So I'm going to use the point slope formula, which again is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Now once I get to this point, I can label everything. So slope we know is m. 3 would be x1, negative 6 would be y1. Now I can plug everything in. Again, this goes for m right there. This goes for x1, which is right there. And this goes for y1, which is right there. So once I plug everything in, I end up with y minus negative 6. The minus comes with the formula, so yes, there are 2 minuses there, is equal to m, which is negative 2 over 3, times x minus x1, which is 3. So that's what that would look like. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start simplifying this. So we know 2 negatives equals a positive, so that's y plus 6 is equal to, I'm going to take this negative 2/3 and distribute it because it's right next to parentheses. So negative 2/3 times x would be negative 2 over 3x. And then negative 2/3 times negative 3 would be positive 2. Then again, lastly, I have to get the y by itself because we want this in y equals. So I got to move, I need this by itself, which means I need to move this. So I'm going to subtract 6 because when I'm moving from one side to the other, we know we do the opposite. And I have to subtract 6 from over here again because we know that we have to subtract it from the number. We can't subtract it from something that has an x on it. Once I do that, I'm going to bring everything down. So that's y, those cancel, is equal to negative 2/3 x, and then 2 minus 6 would be minus 4, and there would be my answer. So again, depending on what they give you is what equation you use. If they give you the slope and the y-intercept, then you know you're going to use the slope-intercept formula. If they give you point and slope, you know you're going to use the point-slope formula. We're going to practice this for several days so you'll get good at it. I'll see you guys in class.